Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Jonspiracy podcast. This is the first episode in hopefully what's going to be a very long series. I'm going to do my best with this podcast or video log, whatever you want to call it, to sort of introduce some ideas to you about the way the world works, or how I think it works, what I've discovered throughout my time researching over the last 20 years. I'm 28 now. Those of you that know me will understand that I've been trying to get this going for about a year or so. I'm going to sort of just work out as I'm going because I'm sick of just waiting around. Unfortunately, I had some quite heavy life stuff happen to me in the background in the process, and I'm trying to sort of work through that right now. So I'm using this as a bit of a distraction to keep myself going and entertained, and hopefully keep some of you entertained as well. I'm aware this kind of looks like a casting couch, but the only thing I'm going to be blowing today is your mind, hopefully. So stick around, we're going to get into it right now. Okay, so guys and girls, thank you first of all for taking the time to listen to me, and if you could all do me a massive favour and like and subscribe to the channel, you'd be helping me out massively, so thank you for that. But I know what you're all waiting for me to talk about. I know, trust me, I know, but I want to get a couple of things, a couple of episodes out of the way first with some info relating to everything that I will get around to talking about. However, there's certain things that I have to try and sort of introduce to you, and you need to sort of understand before I can go with some of the more outlandish ideas, because otherwise basically you'll just think I'm a head case with a tinfoil hat. Unfortunately, most of the people I know that have been speaking sense and talking about everything that I've been speaking about for many years get deemed as insane or labelled as crazy and made to go missing, because so many people don't have the base knowledge they need first and the system's basically designed this way, from school to work to the grave. The best way I've heard this described is to think of the ideas as people travelling up a never-ending set of stairs. Some people are way up high, and others are just taking their first steps, and those at the top can't really come back down to hold your hand the whole way up, because it's counterproductive, and otherwise we end up going backwards. So I'm going to do episodes basically briefly outlining some of the base ideas, and then eventually, when I'm a bit more established, we'll get into some of the meatier subjects and obviously what's going on in today's world. I know also that I sometimes come across as a little grandiose and know-it-all-ish, but I really don't think of myself as anything special or a messiah of any kind. I'm just absolutely sick of people telling me that I'm crazy, and this is me sort of trying to fight back somewhat. So you'll have to bear with me. I'm also just reading a script over here, so if you see me looking over there, you just bear with me while I'm finding my feet. So what's been happening in recent years, everything the conspiracy theorists have been talking about, they've been coming true, and it's getting proved more and more each day. It's happening thick and fast. So sometimes it's hard to keep up, and I understand that, which is why I want to do this podcast in the first place. So with that in mind, today's episode is going to be about predictive programming and mass psychology and how this relates to the modern world. We're going to be looking at some examples of media manipulation and the three very important figures in psychology, public relations and media. These three men are Sigmund Freud, Edward Bernays and Marc Randolph. If you don't know who they are, then fear not, as we're about to have a little delve into them all. Starting with Freud. Now, I'm sure you're more than aware of who he is. He's essentially seen as the founding father of psychoanalysis, defined as a clinical method for treating psychopathology through dialogue between a patient and psychoanalyst. So essentially the reason that therapy exists. Now, he himself is a very interesting character, and there's a lot of rich history and context to dive into, but I'm not going to get too deep about all of that. What I am going to do is talk briefly about how his ideologies and teachings tie in to society, but I'll come back to that towards the end. I'll include links to everything I talk about in the description box, so if you want to take a proper look into who he was and what he was about, who he actually was as a person, then make sure you check the box below. Most of the things I talk about today I'm going to try and link some sort of information to in the description box, so make sure you do go and check that. Bear with me. So today's main topic of the episode is going to be about Edward Bernays, who was, according to Wikipedia and history books, the acknowledged founding father of public relations, and also the nephew of Sigmund Freud, which is interesting and very important to note. He also lived to be 103, the mad bastard. I'm not... who wants to live to 103, do you know what I mean? But he was born in Vienna, Austria in 1891, and he grew up in New York City. His mother was Freud's sister, and his father was the brother of Freud's wife, Martha Bernays, until eventually dying in Massachusetts in 1995. So, quoting from his Wikipedia page, again, links in the description for all of this. His best-known campaigns include a 1929 effort to promote female smoking by branding cigarettes as feminist torches of freedom, and his work for the United Fruit Company in the 1950s, connected with the CIA orchestrated overthrow of the democratically elected Guatemalan government in 1954. He worked for dozens of major American corporations, including Procter & Gamble and General Electric, and for government agencies, politicians, and non-profit organizations. Of his many books, Crystallizing Public Opinion, 1923, and Propaganda, 1928, gained special attention as early efforts to define and theorize the field of public relations, citing works of writers such as Gustave Le Bon, Wilfred Trotter, Walter Lippmann, and Sigmund Freud, his own double uncle. He described the masses as irrational and subject to herd instinct, and outlined how skilled practitioners could use crowd psychology and psychoanalysis to control them in desirable ways. And Bernays later synthesised many of these ideas in his post-war book Public Relations, which was released in 1945, which outlines the science of managing information released to the public by any organisation in a manner most advantageous to the organisation. He does this by first providing an overview of the history of public relations, and then provides an insight into the applications. So this man was essentially responsible for getting the women of America to begin smoking, using very clever mental manipulation techniques and changing public perception using the medical industry for the whole subject by making it cool again and basically promoting it as healthy, which I'm sure you're all aware of. Like back in the day, it used to be like smoke a pack a day to keep the doctor away. Obviously that's changed into an apple and everything now. But that in turn doubled the American tobacco company's profits, because they were literally only selling to men, missing out on 50% of their market, and the women started buying them because of Edward Bernays' campaign, which increased their profit margins massively. It's because under the guide of the teachings of his uncle Freud and the other people that he studied, obviously, he learned how to master the subconscious and used it to his advantage against the people for profit. Again, very, very interesting gentleman and deserves a deep dive, but I'm trying not to waffle too much about anything. So you should take the time to research this for yourself and see the extent of his work and reach across the Western world. The guy survived till 1995, so I would have been about 3 years old by then. I'm 28 now, and his techniques are still very much put into place today. The main topic of his achievements is that I want to talk about today, is his help in what's known as the 1954 Guatemalan coup d'etat, codenamed Operation PB Success, which was a covert operation carried out by the US Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, that deposed the democratically elected Guatemalan president Jacobo Arbenez. Apologies for any mispronunciations or anything today. Which ended the Guatemalan Revolution of 1944 to 1954, and it installed the military dictatorship of Carlos Castillo Armas, the first in a series of US-backed authoritarian rulers in Guatemala. This is very important, but again, I'm not going to dive too deep into that. I will link descriptions and everything in the box below. So as I'm saying, make sure you check out that description box, and I'm going to link all of these subjects and everything, pages to go and find out some basic information about all of these down there. So the reason I brought this up in the first place is because this is evidence that the governments of the West are aware of ways to manipulate the human mind, and they have been since at least the 1920s, if not earlier, meaning they've had plenty of time to perfect the art and get it all down to an exact science for today's societies. This is why advertising is so effective, and it works so well on us, because it plays to our deepest desires and wants and needs that most people aren't even aware of within themselves. You may have heard the phrase sex sells, and that's because it does. It grabs hold of our base instincts to be beautiful, loved and desired, and uses those instinctual urges against you. That's why, for example, so many beer or perfume adverts are all about some beautiful woman with big tits and a perfect arse, or a very handsome gentleman dancing around, and they're always like, oh, the smell of the flowers, oh, the blah blah blah, whatever, and they have nothing to do with the product itself. But it plays to these factors, and subconsciously you become attracted to the product itself. This is largely in part to do with the work of Edward Bernays. There's a really good video to watch with a guy called Blindboy, who was talking on the Tommy Tiernan show from Ireland, where he makes a connection between mental health and soap commercials. They don't sell you on how clean the soap will get you, which is the main purpose of the product. They play to your perception of a public image and essentially make you think that if you buy the product, you'll become as pretty as the people in the adverts. And to quote Blindboy himself, we can't be advertised to if we're completely mentally healthy. So they don't teach us the tools to heal our own mind or to avoid the advertising, because it fucks with their profits, basically. They push their sick agendas on the rest of the world for profit, by keeping us constantly in fear or misinformed. And the link for that clip again in the description box there, so go and check that out, as I don't really want to be flagged for like copyright or anything like that, so I won't add the clip, but I will provide you with a means to find it. But my point of bringing that up is that the Western governments, if not all of them worldwide, know how to manipulate you. To the extent where they can change political outcomes using emotive and subconscious methods. Starting to understand why I've gone back this far yet, or no? Because if the answer is no, then the series may not be for you anyway. But stick around, because you may still learn something. So we're going to move on a little and talk about how this all ties into modern life and how the media is manipulated against us, and this is where the preconditioning and predictive programming comes into effect. Now, to understand why this is so effective, we have to delve into technology a little bit, which can be head-blagging at the best of times. So I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. However, it's well understood within the realms of science that we as humans are essentially antenna for electrical signals, energy forms and wavelengths. And the television, which is the television, is the best known delivery method for pushing certain ideologies and propaganda, because our brains react to different types of wavelengths emitted from those little boxes sat in the corner that everybody's got. Well, the majority of people in the world own anyway. I'm going to read a little extract from the website that I was looking up in regards to this, and again, links in the description box, so go and check that out if you want to read it for yourself. But there are 5 types of brainwaves: alpha, beta, delta, theta and gamma, and each has a role to play in the brain's function. Alpha brainwaves, for example, are responsible for overall mental coordination and learning, while beta brainwaves are generated when we are alert, attentive, solving a problem or making decisions. Theta and delta brainwaves are low in frequency and occur most often of all in sleep or deep meditation. Gamma brainwaves have the highest frequency of all and relate to the simultaneous processing of information from different brain areas. So scientists think that gamma waves aid in visual perception, feelings and repeating words. So the researchers of this, published in the Journal of Neuroscience, tested 2 awake bonnet monkeys. The Latin for those is maca radiata. Not that that's very important, but whatever. And 15 humans to measure their brain activity using an electroencephalogram, or an EEG, as it's more commonly known. The subjects were made to gaze at LCD monitor screens at different angles, and the researchers analysed the eye movements of the subjects using microsaccade analysis and the eye positions using an eye tracking system. So data and statistical analysis of the study revealed that these 2 types of gamma waves were generated in the primary visual cortex, part of the brain that receives visual input from the retina, in both monkeys and humans. The first types of gamma waves were recorded had a frequency of 25 to 45 Hz, while the second had a frequency of 45 to 70 Hz. The 2 types of gamma waves were found to be dependent on the size, orientation, the velocity and contrast of these images displayed on the screen. The researchers also observed that an interesting phenomenon: the size of the LCD screens affected the speed that the gamma waves were generated. While both types of gamma waves were found when the visual stimulus was big and small, the researchers saw that low-frequency gamma waves were weak with smaller objects, and their presence was felt strongly when the diameter of the stimuli was increased. Though scientists have studied gamma waves in the brain in the past, this study is to first observe a relationship between the size of the visual stimulus and the pattern of gamma waves generated. Unlike previous studies that have shown a single gamma rhythm in the primate visual cortex, we found that large visual gratings induce 2 distinct gamma oscillations in both monkey and human electroencephalogram EEG, says the researchers. So I know that might just sound like a load of jargon and a load of bullshit, but what I'm saying there is that the TVs, the technology that we use has the power to produce gamma waves and influence your brain without you even realising. They essentially make you docile and easier to advertise to, which is why it's one of the most effective methods of delivery for this. It's been well established for a long time that they do have an effect on our subconscious minds. So I understand it's ironic that I'm putting this on YouTube, but the people in charge of these industries obviously know this, which is partly why binge watching has become so popular over the years. What most people don't realise is how it's actually affecting your own thought patterns and neural programming, and this ties into the predictive programming and why it's such a valuable and useful tool to those at the top who have orchestrated most of, but not all of, the world's major disasters. Obvious examples include like 9/11, Titanic, things like that, and hinted them for years. The most obvious and well-known example of this is probably Bart Simpson holding up the blatant 9/11 symbolism on the magazine in the Simpsons episode. But there's literally hundreds of thousands of examples of this, and you can go and they're relatively easy to find. Again, I'll put some of those videos and stuff in the description box there, so make sure you go and check that out. Bear with me. You could make the argument there that that life imitates art, which is also known as anti-mimesis, which is another subject for another day. But when it's such a prevalent and prominent component of media in modern society, it starts to become very unlikely that it's not just done on purpose and for nefarious means. So I'm not going to go into too much detail here again. As I said, I'm trying to keep everything sort of short and sweet, but introduce some of these ideas to you in order for you to go and research them yourselves. I don't ever just want you to follow somebody's words. I want you to go and find out yourself. That's the whole point of this whole series. But this brings me in turn to Netflix. Now, we're all very aware of what the service is and does, but everyone enjoys binging a good series or film every now and again, including myself. But it's become such a staple of culture that it's hard to ignore, even if you tried to. So much so that Netflix and chill is now a societal norm and a generally accepted idea. So with that in mind, let me tell you a little bit about Marc Bernays Randolph, who's the founder and original CEO of Netflix. Coincidentally, a relation of Freud and Bernays. And this is why we're all so hooked. This is why we can't stop watching. This is why we're all drawn into these boxes, because the people at the top of these companies have had access to generations of family secrets and knowledge on how to manipulate, persuade and coerce the human mind. It's ridiculously effective as a delivery method of information and subliminal messages because of the way our bodies work and pick up signals and the way that our minds work. And the general idea behind this is that we're drip-fed small pieces of information in relation to what's to be in the future through programming, which is commissioned and okayed by those at the top. So that essentially numbs us all and gets us used to the idea. Bear with me. When the events actually happen. So again, I'll link some videos below to show you some examples of this. But those that are the observant among you will probably have noticed that there's been a massive increase in the amount of shows about AI and machine learning, cloning and consciousness, and like what at the end of the world apocalypse type shows recently, or films. And that's happened within the last sort of 10 years or so. I mean, it's been going for longer than that as well, I am aware. But there's been a massive increase in that recently. And I mean, it was only last week at the time of recording this that Elon Musk basically announced that he's building an AI army of robots. Now, I don't know if you've seen iRobot or any of these type of films, but if you know anything about Asimov's law of robotics, and which again, another conversation for another episode, but it seems like a really fucking bad idea to me. Especially when there's such a massive risk of us as humans like fucking something like that up beyond all repair. Imagine trying to fight an enemy that cannot die, is much stronger than you, is quicker, and has the capabilities of learning and adapting to any attacks quickly and efficiently. That's essentially what people are building right now, and it does sort of terrify me a little bit. And just to clarify, I'm not a technophobe. I do understand the benefits of these sort of technologies and what could actually be done with them, but the way the world works and the way it's run, it's not owned or controlled by people that are looking out for our best interests. Like, are we run by those who want the best for us as a species, or are we in control under the thumb of those that are greedy, warmongering dickheads that want nothing but to terrorise us and control us with bread and circuses since basically the dawn of time. So anyway, that's me rambling with my own thoughts and everything there. But the main point is that that there's a familial connection between the CEOs of massive media and tech companies and the founder fathers' psychology, mental manipulation, advertising and public relations. And if you don't think that's important, relevant or booky as shit, then I don't really know what to tell you, I'm afraid. So I'm going to link some of those things in the thing there. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. I think that's probably enough for me today. And I hope that I've at least introduced some interesting ideas and thoughts into your lives today, and I hope you take the knowledge and carry on the quest for the truth and the answers. Hopefully in future episodes I will sort of link back to some of this and show you how this relates to society today and the topic that everyone's waiting for me to talk about. I know, I understand, I've got to figure out how to do that without being sort of like banned or shut down first. I want to try and get established a little bit first before that happens. But to do that, you'll have to find out and tune in to the next episodes. Now, you're going to have to bear with me a little bit while I'm finding my feet doing this. You also have to understand it's very fucking weird for me to just talk to myself at the camera right now. And the lighting and stuff that I'm using is making me sweat profusely. So if you see me doing this the whole way through the episode, that's what that is. And I'm not normally this sweaty, I promise. But to sound like every other YouTube out there, make sure you hit and like the subscribe buttons. Hit the like and subscribe button, and keep updated for new episodes. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook and a few other sites to keep updated, which I'll link down below. And if you've got any ideas of things that you want me to talk about, or any subjects or questions or anything like that, then leave those in the comments. And for now, thank you for watching the Jonspiracy podcast episode 1, and I will see you all again very soon.